Hey all, this is my last week in this mini series on imitating Jesus. What we've been looking at for the past six episodes or so has been what we can learn from just imitating and looking at the life of how Jesus lived his life and to pull lessons from that for ourselves. This last one is a familiar passage to many of you, but I want to look at it a little bit differently. There was a point in Jesus' life where his disciples came to him and said, Lord, teach us how to pray. It was one of the only things they ever asked him to teach them. And if you're familiar with the story, Jesus then went on to give the very famous Lord's Prayer to his disciples in response to this question. And I began to think, well, why did the disciples ask Jesus to teach them to pray? Well, obviously, they had watched him. They had watched him pray. They had seen him do it. Even though Jesus withdrew to pray, there were lots of times when he didn't. And the disciples began to make this connection between how Jesus lived his life and how he prayed. And so they wanted to understand that. They wanted to know more. You may have heard of all that before, but I want to zoom in on something else. The reason that the disciples could even do this is because Jesus held to a principle that would be very helpful for most of us. And it's simply this. The disciples asked for this information because Jesus let them into his journey. In other words, Jesus didn't shut them out. He allowed them to be a part of everything else. You all know he spent years with these men, but that means they lived together, they laughed together, but they watched Jesus deal with difficult situations, with difficult people. They saw how he comforted people, how he challenged people. They saw how he ministered to people. They were there in all the ups and downs of ministry. The same principle applies to us. If we want to be influence of others, if we want to change the course of someone else's life, we need to be willing to let them into our journey. That would be my question for you today. Who are you letting into the spiritual journey or the journey of your life? Where are you living with transparency and authenticity that others might see it and be drawn to it? Jesus lived a life of transparency, of letting his disciples see what was going on, how he engaged with his Father, the way he dealt with life, and in watching him, they wanted that. Who are you doing that with? The issue is authenticity and transparency. Now, a couple caveats. It doesn't mean you have to let everybody into every part of your life. Jesus had his inner circle. There were people that knew more than others. That's not really the issue. The issue is simply this. We tend to default to what's secure. We let people into those areas of life that are under control or the parts that we're not ashamed to share. And yet there needs to be a transparency and authenticity in those difficult, the secret areas of life in order to change others. The issue is not really bandwidth, because whether it's one person or 10 people, the issue is the intentional, purposeful opening of yourself up so that others might learn from doing life with you. Who are you sharing life with? Who are you allowing into your spiritual life journey? I would challenge you today to think that through, to be intentional on who God might be directing you with there, and you'll just probably never know the level of impact you might have on someone else. Till next time.